A big God deserves a big praise. A big God deserves a big praise. And for that I bless his name. Open your mouth, Zion, and bless him. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I bring you greetings from the Transformation Church, where our bishop is the Bishop Monroe R. Saunders Jr. I thank him for letting me be on this assignment on today. I have the seventh word today, and this word is, Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. If we go to Luke 23 and 46, the word says, then Jesus cried out with a loud sound and said, Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. And having said that, he breathed his last breath. If I was to use a topic for today, today's topic would be, do you trust him in darkness? Have you ever been in a place where the only thing you have left is trust? Can you imagine what Christ felt while hanging there between life and death? Not knowing if what he had signed up for would be the fulfillment of the promise given to him by his Father. The word that stood out while preparing this was trust. Trust is the assurance that even in dark and tight places, that whatever God has spoken shall come to pass. What is Christ teaching us about trust when he states, into thy hands I commit my spirit? I'm glad you asked. He knew that his trust in God would not only save mankind, but it would have completed the will of his Father. In the verse, that text that suggests without tension there can be no activation of trust. Look at your neighbor and I'll say it again. Without tension, there can be no activation of trust. Let's take a moment and look at the correlation between the words that Christ borrowed from David in Psalms 31. David in this text is running and in distress. But David's words in Psalms 31 is quoted in Luke 23 and 46. What would suggest to us that David and Jesus were both at a place of hardship and in distress. But being in hardship and in distress, they both decided to make a quick and bold decision to put their trust and spirit into the hands of the fixer. When Jesus quotes, into thy hands I commit my spirit, he then paints a picture of total surrenderance to the complete and safe will of his Father. The psalm writer had wrote, the safest place in the whole wide world is to be in the will of God. Can you imagine what Christ is feeling in this moment in a bloody, but not also bloody, but painful situation? As we hurry on to look at this, I want you to look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, there's tension at Calvary. Can you imagine the tension that Christ is facing while hanging there bloody and in pain? The tension at Calvary, I can only imagine, produces anxiety, physical depletion, and so much more. But while hanging there, he decides to make a bold statement that is followed by a bold sound. Into thy hands I commit my spirit. Big trust produces big sound. I'll say it again. Big trust produces big sound. Jesus' response signifies that even in a dark and gloomy situation, We must amplify our response and trust in God. If we're going to take anything away from this last word that Christ has demonstrated on the cross, I would suggest that you keep a big sound while going through a big struggle. When Christ states, into thy hands I commit my spirit, he shows us what true trust and surrender really looks like in the face of adversity. Can you imagine how Christ has to make up in his mind to trust God while still handling and hanging there bloody and in pain? And to make things even worse, he then must step into human form and make final arrangements for his mother, forgive those who are in need of divine pardon. Can you imagine? Can you imagine handling divine business while navigating a human but yet bloody experience? I'll say it again. Can you imagine handling divine business while navigating a yet human but bloody experience? Can you really trust God in those moments? Now, as believers, the question I would pose to you is, how big is your sound in midst of chaos? Some of us, we get confused when it goes dark and God is not always there. But my grandmama would always say, he may not come when you want him, but he's always on time. If I was Jesus, I would guess in his mind, he knew that it was already finished. So when he said it is finished, he already had me and you in mind. But I would suggest that when he says, in thy hands I commit my spirit, he's really telling us that no matter what you're in, even while it's death and it is deserted, I'm still in a place of trust. I trust him even in adversity. If I could leave you with songs, because I love songs, the first song would be Trust and Obey, for there's no other way to be happy with Jesus if you trust and obey. And the final song that I thought about that would go in correlation with what we are talking about today is All in His Hands. I put it all in his hands. He can handle that. That's a fact. I put it all in his hands. This and that. This and that. He can handle that. That's a fact. No matter how great or small, he's the master of them all. I put it all in his hands. He can handle it. That's a fact. He can handle it. That's a fact. He can handle it. That's a fact. Anxiety, he can handle it. That's a fact. Illness in my body, he can handle it. That's a fact. I put it all in his hands.